So at the beginning, I will ask you the basic question, like how do you define who is talented people? Who are they?
Okay. Well, I think I need to set some context to that, which is that I've only been here since the 7th of February, so brand new to the council on that date. So a workforce of about 400 people to get to know, understand structures and meet people. So at the moment, given that there isn't a formal talent management process here, I'm applying what I've learned in other places and also my experience of a formal talent management scheme where I worked before. So because I'm in the process of a change programme, I've been very much looking for those who are keen and eager to be part of designing something different. And as I've got to know some of them better, both operationally and in sort of project work, identifying some of those who I think need some opportunities not only within their specialism, but also some more exposure corporately to give them the opportunity to see how business is done in other parts of the council, to broaden their management and leadership experiences.
So interestingly, you said you were working with those who are keen and eager. So in terms of defining talent, is it partly about that sort of attitude, those sometimes quite hard to define set of behaviours that make them stand out? It goes alongside that professionalism, I guess, or that
so in adult social care, clearly you need at frontline management level, you need to have people who have got good grounding in their area of specialism, the statutory duties, managing people, managing relationships, managing partners, that sort of thing. But also you want that spark of actually there's a potential to do things differently, we could be doing things better. So when I've been going round and I've met with individuals and I've done sort of mini focus groups and gone into team meetings, I've said that my constant question has been, what do we do well here and what could we do better? And actually asking those questions, I think you can learn quite a lot from the people who respond to it. So those are the sorts of things I've been doing, and I have got two people that I think, two people at team manager level that I feel I now know well enough to consider that there's certainly service manager potential.
Right.
And then within the senior practitioner group, I would say there are more who are potentially team managers, but I don't know them as well as I would need to do. And I think once I get to that point, it's not just about me and my view. I need to be talking to other managers in my service. But I don't think the concept of talent management is one that is well understood. No. And so you can, and from my experience in another council, you can end up having some quite destructive conversations about talent management if you're not careful about how you do it. Because actually there is talent, which means that you have identified the potential for someone to be doing something different in the organisation and to potentially to be a leader in the organisation. But you have to have those conversations in a way that people who aren't identified don't feel they have failed in some way.
Indeed.
or that the organisation is writing them off. Yeah. Because actually what I also need are good frontline social workers, good frontline OTs, people who are excellent at doing their job, contribute to change programmes and project work, but actually at their core they want to continue being an excellent practitioner.
Yes, and that's okay.
Yes, and I certainly think we need to be careful that we don't do anything that makes people who, I need people who turn up and do the job day in, day out. And I don't want to do anything that suggests that we don't value them as much as anybody else who goes off and does whizzy-do things and goes off on a course or whatever.
Yeah. Yes, it's something an expression that a few people have used when we've gone around and spoken to people. is that everyone out there is talented. You know, everyone's talented. It's just that we're sort of looking at those perhaps who have that spark.
And it's that word, and it's a phrase that's, I think, has got traction probably in the last 3 years or so. It certainly wasn't heard in the public sector. I'm sure it was heard in Silicon Valley or something, but it's gained traction in the public sector in the last 3 years or
Yes, yeah. Okay, and I think how we define those with that spark, defining that spark, I think is a real challenge in this, in trying to identify the best way forward with this process. So, so in your previous organisation, was there a way that they did that particularly?
It was very clunky and uncomfortable actually the way it's done. So what we were given a grid that we had to plot people.
No, a grid.
So
not a matrix.
It was a grid, so it was.
It's like a competency grid.
And we had to, and these were the people who had potential to be a director in the next 5 years.
Okay.
Then there were the people who, I think it might be here, who had the potential to be doing a different job. But then you had sort of dotted lines of, yes, they're stable in their current job and performing well. Or what you didn't want were people down here where they weren't considered to be the talent group, but actually were below another dotted line, which was suggested that there were emerging performance issues. It was horrible. Really was horrible.
Was it?
Yeah. So in the end, you had this quick currency of shorthand of who was in the top right-hand corner. You know, as you get in any organisation, you develop shorthand in terms of how you talk about people. So it was who was in the top right-hand corner.
It's always the top right-hand corner, isn't it?
Yeah.
These sorts of things. So was that presumably was based upon some statement of what good or excellent looked like in terms of competencies?
Yes, and it was in the context that the Council of Development Management competencies that were linked to competence and behaviours, values, competence and behaviour, values, behaviours and competence. And there were training courses associated with them.
Okay. So how widely was that used then, or
quite widely?
How well received?
Well, so you know, as an example, it wasn't well received, and a small group of 4 or 5 white men went off and had placements with some of the big companies that were like them. If I tell you too many, it tells you where I was before. Bosch and Morgan Cars and.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say I think it can be done well. It can also be done badly.
So some external secondments, if that's the right.
Yes. Yeah.
The right word.
Yeah. And again, sort of almost like you're doing with a piece of work to do while they were there.
Yeah.
To be reported back.
Did that work on a reciprocal basis? Was someone from Morgan parachuted in, or?
Yeah, we do have people. They did have people come in from the business sector into the council.
Okay. That's interesting. That might be a little bit challenging for us. I don't know if
please
we're quite ready
don't phone.
for that.
If you've worked out which council it is, please don't phone them
No,
and say
no,
how
no,
Clarke
no.
said.
No, I wouldn't do it. No, please.
I won't do it.
Amy, yeah.
So, what do you think about how should council implement the talent management practice in inclusive way, like everyone in the council is talented, or should we focus on just a group of talented people for how can I explain it?
Yeah, should we look at just managers or a tier of management, or taking that idea that everyone's talented, we should apply these principles right across the piece? It's that exclusive, inclusive
I think it depends
idea.
what the workforce need has been identified as in South Gloss. Because there are general principles about developing your workforce to their maximum potential that apply. But then if there is something about preparing the council for the future, or stopping people feel they have to move on to another council in order to develop their career, and so wanting to retain talent by giving people opportunities? Is it that the council's business is changing and therefore we need to foster talent with a non-traditional council type approach to work? I think it comes down to politicians and senior officers defining what talent it is that they want to manage and then developing an approach accordingly. But then if you drill it down to someone like me managing a service, where I know just in terms of succession planning, I need to be doing something because the top management team is all of the same age, then I need to be looking at giving some people opportunity to find out actually, do they want to be doing something different? Could they be doing something different? And I would, the two people I'm thinking of, I would feel very sorry if they felt they had to move on to another council in order to get that opportunity.
Okay, so there's something there about circumstances and situations and what sort of organisation are we trying to shape in the future? Are there particular hotspots or pinch points where key people may be on the point of moving on or whatever? Do we have any ready-made successors? So a number of reasons that we perhaps might look at this in. And I guess in saying that, then that's probably more of an inclusive approach that we're looking at there. To
if you're
cover
shaping
all
the
of those
workforce for the
bases,
future,
then
it's
yes,
actually
we
looking
need
at
to-
what talent do we need for that workforce in the
Yes.
future.
Yes. Yeah, that's helpful, Anne, thank you. How are we doing?
So how are you currently managing and developing people that you think they are
So
talented?
in terms of the two people that I've specifically been talking about, it's been trying to be giving them some exposure in meetings, so they're presenting to, thinking of the senior pracs first of all that I've met, so giving them the opportunity to look into an issue and then do a presentation at the operational services management group, which should be a safe space for them to start doing something different. What you don't want is to be encouraging somebody to stretch themselves and then expose them somewhere that if things don't go well, it's absolutely horrible and it could take years for them to recover. So
and then they leave.
Yes, so that sort of thing, so giving presentations, being part of project work. I deliberately asked one person to take on a piece of work that I could have given to service managers to do, which was to review the protocol of transferring cases between teams. That's quite a hot issue and one that can lead to some disagreement. And I asked him to do it and turned it round in time. Really good, solid, collaborative piece of work with representatives across different teams. And produced a document, good document. We're using it for 3 months. He's taking further comment, and then the final version will be issued. So it is about giving people the opportunity to do something different. And the reality is that when you're doing that, you're often not taking anything off them in order to do that, because that's the reality. We're a frontline delivery service, so that continues. I haven't got anyone else that I could put in to do the team manager's job while they're doing some project work. So it's about chunking up pieces of work that are doable, but giving people different exposure.
Yes. What sort of investment for you has that been in your time in?
I've actually, when I look back
supporting
at my
that
diary,
person?
I've gone around spending a lot of time with people and teams, but I've seen that was my deliberate strategy for my first 6 months.
Right.
So I've done my diagnostic now,
Yes.
and we're moving into a formal change programme with the first meeting of the board
Right.
in October and a staff conference in November.
Just quickly referring back to your previous organisation, I think that's quite an important issue or a potential challenge for us in recognising that, someone like yourself with a real appreciation of this and seeing this as a good investment in time. We're not sure that everyone necessarily will see it in that way or embrace it quite so readily. How did your previous organisation address that one? Did they do anything specifically, explicitly?
It was led by the Chief Executive.
Right, okay.
Who was very much forward-looking in terms of the business of the local authority is changing, the workforce the local authority needs is changing, so how can we have the best workforce to do the new things that we're doing?
Yes.
And so she also did it in the context of starting a review of how posts were graded, because it's the traditional thing that in local authorities you usually get additional points for managing budget and managing people. The more you get, the more you do, the more you get. Whereas in fact in some jobs that the council now needs, you need really specialist people who don't hold lots of budgets, nor do they manage lots of people, but their individual area of expertise is extremely important and the council would want to hold on to them. So as I left, that piece of work was ongoing.
Right. So you've got a figurehead there who was really supportive of it and legitimised it in a way.
So what do you think the role of the chief executive and directors in implementing the talent management practice?
Well, leadership and understanding. Recognition that not all directorates are exactly the same. So talent management in education might look different, would look different in public health, would look different in social work, would look different in highways. So I do think it's one where one size doesn't fit all, but perhaps that whole principle of drilling down what's our business in the future going to be needs to be done not only for the council but at directorate level.
Yeah.
So for example, if you look at local authority social services departments 10 years ago, most services would have been provided in-house, and there would have been it probably wouldn't have been called wanted to be called procurement, but you wouldn't have had commissioners. Whereas now commissioning is a much more important part of a council's key role. So no longer directly providing services for its population, but commissioning excellent services for its population. So how do you develop? I'm not saying we haven't got them here, but it became a new question. How do we help people whose jobs are perhaps coming to an end to become good commissioners, or how do we attract high-performing commissioners into the council? So that's just one example of how the workforce changed in the public sector in the time I've been in it, shifting from provision to commissioning. So there almost needs to be the horizon scanning of so what do we need for the next 2 years in terms of business as usual, and then scanning the horizon for the next 5 and 10 years, particularly in the context, for example, of Brexit, in terms of what the council will need.
So I think it's a really interesting point. And I think that seems to be emerging quite loudly for us, doesn't it? Whilst there perhaps needs to be some corporateness about how we manage talent, and so to ensure some consistency and equitability, there still needs to be some recognition of that very fact that actually there are quite different needs and drivers and motivations.
And for some directorates, the crunch point might be coming sooner than in other directorates, in which case it might be a decision to front load activity in particular directorates because that's where the need is going to be most critical in the short term.
Yes. Yeah, understand. Okay. I mean, just on that point about a corporate approach to this, I don't know what thoughts you might have about what that needs to look like, or should there be a corporate overview of this, or management?
I think there does need to be a corporate overview, because I think I think the corporate overview becomes the key message that actually we value everybody and we give everybody opportunities, but we also need to look to the future. And as part of looking to the future, we want to work with individuals who see themselves as developing or in a particular direction, or want to have a competent conversation about their potential to develop in different directions.
Yes, and I think we've, if we have a bit longer, we'd probably sort of talk a bit more about PDPR and how we encourage those types of conversations. PDPR is just going through a bit of a refreshment, and I think a bit more space has been given to that particular conversation about someone's future and their career development and career aspirations. So just to make it a little bit more rigorous and to encourage the fact that conversation
And we're doing
happens.
the, I don't know if Nick's mentioned to you, but Sonia and I wanted to use insights with our management
Oh
teams.
yes, he had mentioned that.
Yeah. So again, that's moving in, encouraging them to begin to think about their strengths as leaders, and where they've got perhaps some strengths and areas for further consideration. To develop them as leaders.
It's really I'm conscious of using time up, but I was really conscious of something I heard on the radio yesterday. I was reading about, which was people being appointed not to specific roles, but being appointed on the basis of that they have certain skills, abilities, strengths. So we actually bring that into the organisation rather than appointing a principal, whatever it might be. And it was quite an interesting idea.
So when I applied for this job, I was very conscious that I have never ever in my life managed anything to do with housing.
Right.
But my title is Head of Adult Social Care and Housing. So I was very upfront at interview and also at the appointments panel with members that that was a gap. But I believed that my approach to managing social care, and given that I understood there was a very competent technical manager at a senior level, that I would be able to transfer my knowledge and skills into tackling that.
Yes.
And it does come a point where you've got to weigh up the balance between the technical knowledge in a particular specialism and the leadership, money management, people management side of the senior job.
Like emotional intelligence stuff, however we're defining that, is going to play a part, isn't it, I guess, in identifying those talented people.
And resilience as well, that's a big one. My watch has stopped because I didn't plug it in, so
we're guessing
almost
we're
done
about
now.
4 minutes to 12, so
Thank you.
You need to go. I think we're nearly there, Amy, aren't we?
Yes.
Are we?
So, should we ask about the HR?
Yeah.
So what do you think about the HR role after the chief executive and director?
Okay. Well, HR is a broad title for a lot of functions within what we call HR. So I guess the workforce leads would be working with managers and also workforce development and, in doing all that.
I think the sense that we've got from people is let's not over systematise it, or let's not make it clunky. Let's recognise difference, but also ensure that there is some consistency. So it's looking at HR's role in ensuring there is some governance and scrutiny around it.
Yes, I do think there are. I think there have to be some systems to give people assurance that this is a systemised approach rather than a favourites type action. It also needs to be systemised for the council's benefit, so it's not challenged on issues like, well, so and so was given all the opportunities. No wonder they developed into.
I was conscious you saying you've got 5 white guys who.
And then what was the other thing I was going to say? So for the workforce, for the organisation, and also for the organisation to be able to challenge itself in terms of, are we offering development opportunities to people because actually they're replicating what we have at the moment, whether it be in skill sets or gender, everything else.
Okay.
I think doing the unconscious bias course recently, I think that was a good foundation if we're moving on to this
Yes.
approach.
Everything starts to fit together,
Yes,
doesn't
yes,
it? When you look
So
at it
the
like that,
unconscious bias challenge, I think everyone should be ready for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Great.
I hope that gave you what you wanted.
Yeah, we've got what you need, Amy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anne.
Okay.
Really appreciate
Thank you.
your time.
Thank you for your time.
That's
If you've got
really
any,
helpful.
if you've got any queries on anything I've said or anything any notes you've made, you know where I am.
Okay. So Amy's going to crunch all of this. Good luck with that. And then we'll issue some early sort of findings and things, I would imagine, before we